I want you to recall when you were 13. You probably lived in your parents' home, ate daily meals cooked by your parents, and went to school. Globally, many children do not experience this privilege. I want to take you to a village in Borno State, northern Nigeria, where a girl named Wasila lived. Like many girls her age who lived in this community, Wasila was given in marriage at the age of 13 to a man of 45. In this community where Wasila lived, health professionals do not work there, especially because of the widespread terrorist attacks by Boko Haram. Life became even more miserable for her when she became pregnant. She labored in the home for 2 days, unattended by a health professional.
Hello, everyone. I'm Deborah Kozowski, your host with Diversity TV and contributing writer with Diversity Smart Mag. Today, we have some fun for us today. We're going to talk about the 3-minute thesis that just recently occurred at the University of Alberta. And we have the top 2 winners with us here today. We have Oluwakemi Omudu and Gazelle Eskandari Siddiqui. These beautiful ladies have so much to share with us today, and this 3-minute thesis started in 2008 and was founded in Queensland, and we have a special treat for you to experience some of the things that they did to help prepare them for that 3-minute thesis. So I'm going to start with you, Oluwakemi, and one of the things I want to point out, yours is a nursing background, and I just was reading about the QS World University Rankings, and the University of Alberta is actually ranked fourth in the world.
Absolutely. Faculty of Nursing is 4th in the world. Yeah.
So that's exciting to hear, and I hear you were the only master's thesis individual as part of the 3-minute thesis, and your subject matter was the obstetric fistula policy in Nigeria.
Absolutely.
So before we get you to jump in and give us a sample of that, I do have just some general questions for our audience to get to know a little bit more. But I really want to know what inspired you to pursue this topic.
Okay, so obstetric fistula is a condition that I came to know very early as a student in Nigeria. It was actually my first posting in the clinical areas was an obstetric fistula ward. I learned that the condition was 100% preventable, and women suffered so much from having a hole. I mean, it's simply a hole that can be fixed in less than 30 minutes. So I think that passion stayed with me, and generally my passion for women's health and for their reproductive rights definitely motivated me to study obstetric fistula policies in Nigeria.
That's very interesting because it's something that's preventable or something that can be treated very quickly, and no one was doing anything about it from what I understand.
Well, actually, there has been definitely strategies in place to try to prevent and to manage the situation. There's been the family planning, the strategies to help women to space their children, to help them to get better maternal care in pregnancy. But obviously, these approaches have not really reached every woman. And a lot of women in the grassroots, in the rural communities, still do not access this health care. They're not able to have proper planning for their births. And also we have the issue of child marriages, which is really strong in Nigeria. And definitely child marriage is one of the factors that needs to be addressed in order to prevent obstetric fistulas from happening. And we also have the low empowerment of women, the low power for women, and the absence of the voices of women in research and policy generally, and the patriarchal forces as well in the governments that make it very difficult for women to have a voice and to, be able to speak for themselves and to be able to take control of their reproductive health and to be aware of their rights, essentially. So obstetric fistula is really only a symptom of broader health issues and broader issues in society, and broader issues with the policy in place for women's health in Nigeria.
So I like how you went beyond what is happening to these women and girls and really bringing some of the issues to the forefront. What is the youngest age that you've heard of for child marriage?
So I actually have heard 9. And what they say is when a girl gets married at 9 years, they're supposed to wait till she has her first menses before she starts having sex. But then in most cases, or in some cases, it doesn't occur that way. So that girls that are given in marriage at tender age of 9, 11, 13, basically based on traditional customs that say they're mature enough to be married. And so inadvertently they end up getting pregnant before their reproductive organs are mature enough to accommodate the passage of a baby. And so when we have situations like this, what results is you have birth injuries that occur because these young girls deliver their babies in unattended. They basically are unattended. They don't have any professional intervention. Some of them are being delivered of their babies by relatives who know little or nothing about childbearing. So you expect that there will be definitely problems in childbirth, like obstetric fistulas.
So with knowing this, is this part of what has driven you to have this passion to study this subject?
Absolutely, because I feel that if I had gotten married at the age of 13, I wouldn't be able to get to this point where I find my talents, where I find my gifts or my capacities, as in even in the academics. I wouldn't have been able to reach beyond the four walls of who knows whose house it would have been and what I would have gone through. So I definitely am passionate about anything that has to do with reproductive health of girls and women, because I believe that if you educate one girl or educate one woman, you educate a whole community. So that's important for me, to have powerful women and definitely liberation. So when I look at issues that has to do with maternal health, I look from the perspective of emancipation. I look from the perspective of freedom, of growth, of development. Basically, I feel like everyone should have the freedom to grow and to be the best that they can be, regardless of what gender they are, basically.
So just as you're talking, and education has definitely, you came to Canada 2 years ago to come and study. What happened for you? What was the single, trying to think of the right word, was it education that has set you apart from being one of those girls?
Absolutely. Education is definitely one major thing which my parents gave to me, and I wouldn't say my parents were like rich or anything, but they were like parents who worked hard to ensure that all their kids went to school and had education. And this striving and this keeping up of the momentum to make sure that kids go to school is huge, because then I'm able to develop my potential and I'm able to be here to do this work in obstetric fistulas. If I did not have that background, if I did not have that first-hand encouragement by my parents to go to school, if I had been betrothed to a man of 45 years at the age of 13, I wouldn't have found out that I could do a 3-minute thesis and win. I would probably have 6 babies and have obstetric fistulas by now.
But what you just opened up for me and for our viewers is the world of possibility. That if people are given the opportunity through education, that the world is that oyster, everything is available to you to grow and inspire others around you. What did you want to be when you were growing up?
So when I was growing up, I actually wanted to be a lot of things. I wanted to be a singer, a ballerina, I wanted to be a model, I wanted to be everything that had to do with being a star. And imagining myself on stage doing something really great. But all those dreams obviously didn't come true. And I have no regrets that they didn't come true, actually.
Well, some of us here at Diversity TV seem to beg to differ because you've used your creativity for that 3-minute thesis and being that star winner on the stage. So how about I just give you 3 minutes to try us out and see how that goes. What do you think?
Sure.
All right. We're going to have you recreate those 3 minutes. We're going to be on the edge of our seats to learn everything about the obstetrical fistulas in Nigeria.
I want you to recall when you were 13. You probably lived in your parents' home, ate daily meals cooked by your parents, and went to school. Globally, many children do not experience this privilege. I want to take you to a village in Borno State, northern Nigeria, where a girl named Wasila lived. Like many girls her age who lived in this community, Wasila was given in marriage at the age of 13 to a man of 45. In this community where Wasila lived, health professionals do not work there, especially because of the widespread terrorist attacks by Boko Haram. Life became even more miserable for her when she became pregnant. She labored in the home for 2 days unattended by a health professional. She eventually delivered a dead baby, and on top of this, developed obstetric fistulas. Obstetric fistula is a hole between the vagina and bladder or bowel wall of a woman or girl, leading to uncontrolled leakage of urine and sometimes feces through her vagina. Worldwide, over 2 million women and girls currently live with obstetric fistula. Oftentimes, families and communities abandon these girls. They experience unspeakable shame and isolation that has huge mental health implications, so much that some resort to suicide. Evidence from research shows that there are wider forces that shape the health of Wasila. These forces are highly structured by broader policies, both within and outside of the healthcare system. In my master's thesis, I aim to analyze these broader policies. Central amongst them is the strategic framework for the elimination of obstetric fistulas, which was put in place in 2010 in Nigeria and spans until now. I will analyze how language is used within this document, references made in this policy, and the broader health determinants that shape the experience of girls and women living with obstetric fistula. Ongoing analysis has revealed this document marginalizes the voices of women, reinforces power inequities, suppresses women's rights, and does not consider the broader health determinants that shape the health of Wasila. This finding is significant and timely as the Nigerian government is implementing a policy for the year 2016 and beyond. My findings will provide useful implications for the development of this future policy to better the lives of girls like Wasila. In closing, you may ask me, why should we care about Wasila? Well, I leave you with this phrase by the World Health Organization, which says, and I quote, "Without health for all, there is no health at all." Thank you.
Fantastic. And you had, I lost track of time because you had me mesmerized in a story. And I think that's what's so powerful about this 3-minute thesis and how you just draw people in. And I know our audience will be drawn in as well to the passion that you're sharing, not only about the subject matter that you're working on, but also that there's someone like you who's out there being the change in the world, making a difference for young girls and women out there. So thank you so much for sharing that thesis with us. Before I switch over, what I want to do is ask you, what advice would you give someone in grade 12 who's out there not knowing what they should do for their career?
Okay, so primarily, I would say put God first to decide what would be good for you. Sometimes what you think is good for you is not really what's good for you. Sometimes you have talents you don't know that you have. So it's important that you pray and at the same time search within yourself and be patient before you make decisions to go into a career, because you might spend a lifetime doing it.
And people are finding it so difficult because I think sometimes the problem is that we have so many choices. I remember growing up that the majority of what I heard was doctor, lawyer, nurse. engineer, but it wasn't until I went to university that I learned that there was so many different avenues out there. But what I want you to talk about now is, I know that there's a voting process that's part of this 3-minute thesis. Can you tell us a little bit more about that and what people need to do?
Oh, so yeah, people need to vote. So for the Western Canadian Finals, there's going to be an online version where you can actually view the event live, and there's a link online that you can go to click and vote for the U Alberta winner, who is me.
So we'll make sure that that link is posted so that people can help in supporting this mission. All right. So now I'm going to switch over. This time our focus is going to be on biochemistry. Ghazaleh, her subject matter, she's doctorate presenter for the 3-minute thesis, and she was in search of a way to stop army of protein transformers in neurodegenerative diseases. So I'm going to get you, before we get to time you and try you out on your thesis, just tell us a little bit more about what that means without giving away your 3 minutes.
Okay, so I work with protein misfolding diseases, and this is a general term we use for generally diseases that affect brain and cause damage to the brain, and they don't involve normal infectious particles that we know. They don't involve bacteria or viruses as we define as infectious particles. Mysteriously, they include a protein, and this protein, not a specific protein, in each disease there is a different protein, but what they all have in common is they switch their natural normal structure and get a specific new structure which is toxic for the cell, and this causes problems, and the final outcome will be diseases that we know as neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's disease, the famous ones, Parkinson's disease, or prion diseases, which is quite infamous in Alberta because of the mad cow disease and the problem it has caused the beef industry. And this is something that is becoming more and more important as the population is aging, and we are dealing with more elderly people than we might have been, for example, dealing with, 50, 60 years ago. So yeah, that's what I generally work on.
So we were talking before this interview that one of the things that you wanted to be when you were growing up was a director. Yes. And that soon after that you were passionate about cell biology, but basically still stayed in the biology, biochemistry type field. So what is your why for this subject matter? Is there a family member or just something about this subject that makes you so passionate?
I think I always liked to understand how stuff work. I remember my mom always says I never had a healthy, normal doll. Whatever she bought me, I would start dissecting it into pieces, which is a little bit creepy for a young kid, but I would do it. And then I started doing it once I was like maybe 7, 8 years old with a goldfish or baby pigeons that I would find dead, and I would like very curiously dissect them open, see what's happening in them. So I always had this passion of how a living thing works. But by the time I made it to high school, I knew for sure that I want a career. At the time, I thought I might become a neurosurgeon because I wanted a career in understanding better how brain works, because the biology and the complexity of mammalian nervous system for me is mesmerizing still. And I think our brain is the unique thing that makes us special. All those complex, sophisticated tasks that we're capable of doing, creating art, doing very complex, cognitive functions, these are all done by the brain. And that is basically when I decided to continue my education in biology, cell and molecular biology, and I did that. And later on, I continued in biochemistry because, well, the names don't really matter. I continued in understanding, like, the details of protein, molecular biology of proteins in the brain and in the nervous system. And currently I am working on specifically on, as I said, diseases that involve brain, and this is mainly because for me it's really amazing to understand how in molecular level something goes wrong that makes us from this intelligent, amazing creature, human being, to something that is not very different from maybe other creatures that, like, once we lose our intelligence, we really are not ourselves anymore. So I think it's really interesting. For me, it's always been interesting to understand how this works in molecular level.
Well, ladies, I am totally blown away. But what my curiosity sparks me is, what did it take to prepare for 3 minutes? It looks like an overnight success.
Well, it's definitely not an overnight success, because it took me like days and hours of like rehearsing in front of the mirror, talking with my supervisors to get feedback on what I really was doing. I felt like the 3-minute thesis process was a process of getting to know exactly what I'm doing, because believe me, in 3 minutes you really have to talk about what you're doing, like exactly. It has to be consolidated, and it has to be straight to the point. And that process really helped me to sort of, realize what was important to my thesis and what I needed to get out there in terms of the scope and the significance of my research. So it definitely took a lot of practice and a lot of reworking of my lines, and trying to find out, going back to my proposal again and saying what exactly is it that I'm doing, and doing this in front of like my supervisors and saying it and getting feedback was really useful. So it did take a number of days of work. Yeah.
How about you?
For me, I had a previous experience of similar thing, 3-minute thesis presentation. It was not 3-minute thesis, it's a different thing called Falling Wall Labs, which I strongly recommend to students of UL of A to also participate in. And there I realized that although I'm doing this, it's not really easy for me to communicate with people who are not necessarily biochemists or do not have that much knowledge about brain and neuroscience and nature and biology, and they really couldn't understand what I was talking about when I started saying it in a scientific way, like my own scientific language, I mean. So I started listening to a lot of good presenters, TED Talks, a lot of people in my department when they talk, all those fascinating talks and presentations that will stick to your head forever. And I started paying attention, and the 3-minute thesis was a good opportunity for me to challenge myself and see how much I've progressed. And that is why I did it. It took around maybe 2 weeks. I started writing down sentences, and then it was like writing a screenplay, because I had to start the story in a way to make it interesting. And I thought Transformer may be the best example, and everyone know what Transformers are. And it started maybe 2-3 weeks before the semifinals, and I kept changing it until the morning of the presentation. So it was definitely not a one-night achievement.
So here I'm going to go back, because I finally got you both caught. You wanted to be a director growing up, and here you were directing your own screenplay. And here you were using that creativity in your mind. So for our viewers out there, no matter what you wanted to be when you were growing up, there is that golden thread throughout all of your experiences that have led you to where you are today. And I want to thank these beautiful 2 brilliant women for sharing their 3-minute thesis, making us all a little bit smarter for it, and also knowing that you are in charge of your story and in charge of being the change in the world. I want to thank you again, and thank you to you, our viewers, with Diversity TV. Have a great day.